Hey everybody, it is Ellen Jody here. We are doing the first PLC for high school dance of April. I hope everybody had a restful spring break and that you are ready to sprint to the finish line for the end of this year. I'm sure you are busy preparing for a spring show, whether that is digital or in person. So I certainly hope that goes well and mirrored with that. Today we are talking about assessments and their use in the dance classroom. So definition and use. So defining assessment in the dance classroom. Chances are that as a dance teacher in public ed, you have taught at a private studio at some point in your career, or maybe you actually even still teach at a private studio 1 or 2 nights a week. Bless you, because I did that for a few years and it nearly killed me. It's really hard to go from what we do here in our high school jobs to an evening job where we're teaching dance as well to different students. It's a different process. So I don't have to tell you how much of a different venue the public dance classroom looks like from a private studio with different students. So at the studios, there aren't any state standards. There are no formal observations from administration. You don't have to give grades. There aren't rubrics, no formal assessments. Of course, all of that does happen at the private dance studio and the private dance classroom, but it's just not as defined as it is in the public dance education classroom. So what are we assessing as dance teachers in public education? Well, we're assessing the standards. So we have our Georgia State standards. For this whole webinar, pretty much focused on a traditional dance technique. There will be another webinar in April about assessment, and I can maybe delve into a little bit of more different things in that way rather than technique. But I thought technique is what we're teaching most of the time. So, if you're teaching a ballet class, you're starting at the bar with your pliés. If you're teaching a modern contemporary class, you're either starting on the floor or you're starting with some sort of rolling through the spine exercise. At least that's what I do. If it's jazz, you are starting with some sort of isolation warm-up or something of the sort. Or you might be focusing on some type of world dance. But either way, in this type of technique dance class, we're most likely focusing on this main standard right here. So it's the performing. So I guess I didn't put that title up there, but it is the performing strand. So identify and demonstrate movement, elements, skills, and terminology of dance. So that includes execution of an introductory level technique-based warm-up, such as ballet, modern jazz, tap, world dance, that relates to strength, muscular endurance, and flexibility. We want them to demonstrate an understanding of basic dance terminology and technique. We want to develop focus, control, and coordination in performing. And this is, I just did dance 1, introductory level combinations of locomotor and axial movements, and demonstrate kinesthetic awareness through body parts and isolations and connect to the body to one's kinesphere. Demonstrate the ability to transfer weight, change direction, and maintain balance, and then identify dance vocabulary from codified techniques. So this pretty much covers everything you do in a dance technique class. So for a majority of our classes, this is our focus. One of our main goals is to advance our students' technical ability in whatever genre you want to focus on and to get them ready for performance. So as we go through our technique classes, we are assessing all the time and in real time. So we see something, we assess that it's not what it needs to be, and we fix it right there. So we see a student with a sickled foot. If the foot is supposed to be pointed, then we tell them to straighten from the ankle. If we see a student who's doing a plie and her knees are pointed inward, not over the middle toes, we fix that and tell her to put the knees over the third toe. That's an assessment. That is you fixing something. You see a dancer's arms are being held from the top of the shoulders, and you correct her and tell her that the arms come from the middle of the back. A dancer might not be low enough in a grand plie in an African dance combo. So all of these things that you do naturally in your technique dance classes are assessment. We assess and we fix in real time, immediately. So we are assessing all the time. So, and as we make those corrections as we go along in our classes, we're hoping that the students take those corrections in, fix it while we're there and while we're asking them to fix it, and then remembering that correction for the next time. So everything keeps building and building, and they get better and better. So our administrations at our schools might not understand this concept of us continually assessing. So that's why we need to define assessment for them and for ourselves. So as I said, obviously technique is not the only thing we assess in our programs, but that was a big focus for this webinar today, since I think that's what a lot of us do for a majority of our classes in our programs. All right, so we're going to go through each assessment. So a diagnostic assessment. So what is a diagnostic assessment in the dance classroom? And this is your pretest. We are assessing what the students know, what skills they have, what their level of understanding is, so that we can gear our instruction to their immediate needs. For dance, this could be a written test if you wanted to do a vocab test or some anatomy or dance history for students that maybe you've had in the past. You could do that also, and maybe you do that on top of all of this technique. But again, for right now, I'm just going to focus on technique class and assessing those skills. So what do they know? What is their skill level? How much of an understanding do they have of what we are doing? And I did do a lot of this through focusing on Dance 1 or Intro to Dance for kids who may have never danced before. So for your Intro or Dance 1 classes, you might be thinking, well, as for technique, they don't have any prior knowledge. In addition, that is most likely true. For your Intro or Dance 1 classes, you might be thinking, well, as for technique, they don't know anything. They don't have any prior knowledge. Well, that's most likely true. You could have some students who took ballet or creative movement when they were 4 and 5, and they remember what a plie is. So for an Intro Dance 1 diagnostic assessment, I would be gauging how they take in the information. It's most likely going to be new information. So how are they taking in the information of you showing a plie or a tendu or a roll down or a contraction? They don't know what it is, but maybe they are naturally putting their knees over their toes. Maybe they are having a difficult time switching from left to right. Maybe a student cannot figure out how to brush the foot along the floor in a tendu, but seems to naturally understand how to articulate through the spine as you're rolling down. So this kind of assessment is going to help you gear your instruction and help you decide what kind of things you're going to do in the technique class. In our classes, we also naturally differentiate. Because we are assessing in real time as we are giving the information, it allows us to differentiate. Like I said, well, Susie doesn't have her foot pointed in tendu, so you fix that. Erin doesn't have her arm out in second position, so you fix that. So we're differentiating and we're giving individual instruction. And I'm sure that we have lots of students in our classes, and maybe we don't get to each student in each class, but we do get around to all of the students. So I believe our discipline really enables us to give that individualized, differentiated instruction. So other than technique, getting back to the diagnostic assessment, other than technique for your Intro or your Dance 1, you might want to do an improvisation session. This will also, I believe, reap you valuable information about each student. So is there a student who completely froze up and has no idea how to move once given the freedom to be creative? Or alternatively, do you have a student who seemed to not understand how to make the body do a tendu or a plie, but is now moving with ease because she is given the freedom to move how she wants and given that choice? So the diagnostic assessment in the dance classroom, it looks a lot like, a technique class that you are just assessing and seeing where every student is. As far as the documenting of diagnostic assessments, I know we keep all this information in our head, but for our administrations, we probably need to make some rubrics. So I did a rubric for this. It's just a sample, and I will post this in the discussion, but here I made this little screencast. All right, here is my sample diagnostic rubric for a technique class. So I've got engagement, commitment to the movement, focus and concentration. I also have the state standards on there that match. I have body awareness and control. I have stamina and flexibility and coordination. I've got expressive skills and rhythm. I have memorization, and then I have improvisational skills. So this is the rubric, and I go from 4 down to 1, and you can briefly look at these, but I will put this rubric in the discussion post. All right. So I just made a little screencast there. Those are fun if you have used Screencast-O-Matic. I did want to go over, I know I focused on the performing standard for technique, but this rubric actually went through a bunch of other ones. So I've got the performing in there, a lot of the performing standards, and then also the 2 of the creating standards. So we go through the demonstrated attentiveness, focus, concentration, initiative, and self-discipline when participating in the dance environment. We're also developing a control, coordination, focus, recognize proper alignment that facilitates efficiency of movement, demonstrate kinesthetic awareness, the ability to transfer weight, change direction, and maintain balance. And then this goes through the music standards. So understand and apply music concepts to dance, and then phrase movements artistically, aesthetically, and musically, and that would be in that improvisation part. And then execute a introductory level technique-based warm-up. And then the creative ones were also under the improvisation. So demonstrate an understanding of the creative process, manipulate the elements of personal choreography. So I'm not talking about a high level improvisation for your dancers, just enough to get you to know how they move and where they are in their creativeness. So that was just a sample. Okay. So moving right along to formative assessment. So what is a formative assessment in the dance classroom? This is your informal in-process checks for knowledge. So again, this is the same kind of corrections we were doing in our diagnostic. We are just continuing to do them. Like I said, we always assess. We are always assessing. You just have to be able to define your assessment to your administration. How are they processing the information? Have their skills improved? Is there a need for review or remediation? Or that could look like, are they ready to learn how to do one pirouette? Or do they need to still go to just a passe hold? That kind of thing. So that's basically your formative assessment, is what we do during the dance class. So the diagnostic assessment would be those first couple classes where you're assessing what they can do, what their body naturally does, that kind of thing. And then the formative assessment is the same thing. We're just moving along throughout the process of learning. So I just wanted to give you a few other ideas. Where are they? Okay. So again, the in-class observations, which I just talked about, we do all the time. This could be working with a partner. You could pair them up. And I had mentioned about the pirouette. You could have them work on pirouettes. So they could take turns performing either the passe hold or a one pirouette with their partner. Then their partner can critique and give feedback to each other. You might want to make sure they understand what critique and feedback mean, so they understand what constructive criticism is. But so that could be a formative assessment you do. You could have them in one of the classes create a goal. Okay, I want to be able to do a split. I'm just sort of making this up. So then you can take a video of them, or they can take a picture or a video of them doing a split at the beginning, and then 4 weeks later we can go back to that video and we can see where we are and check where they are in the process. So something like that. You could give the dancers a list of some of the technique you've learned. Plie, tendu, chaîné, turn, and then they might pick those vocab words out of a bucket or something, and then they put those 3 or 4 or 5 words together. And that could be a check on where do they know the words, do they know the move that goes with the word, and then can they put them together. So that might be a good formative assessment. And then, self-assessment. I mean, that can take on a ton of different forms. Partly that might be the video as well, but all kinds of self-assessment that you can do with them for formative assessments. So then the other formative assessment that I do, it's my daily dance assessment. So I have this. I usually use this for my intro level or maybe my second year students. So for me, that's an intermediate 1 class. So that would be the dancers that were in intro 9th grade, say, and then they move up to intermediate 1. So they're still learning how to conduct themselves in a dance class. So this is what I use for that. And this is a formative assessment because this is how we act in the dance studio. This is what we do. So it just holds them accountable. And this all falls under the performing standard. So I'll read down. So I've got commitment to the movement and technique. So that's, is the dancer completely committed? Are they engaged? Is there energy behind the movement? And then to the opposite end of that, the dancer isn't committed and there's no energy and there's no engagement. Team player, respect for classmates, respect for the teacher and the dance room. So the dancer, that number 4 would be dancer is mature team player, is very respectful of classmates and the teacher and the dance room. And then the opposite would be not a team player, disrespectful. And, is not, we all love our dance rooms and our space, and we want our dancers to be respectful of that as well. So no matter, this would be depending on your procedures, but changes out on time on the dance floor, ready to dance in 6 minutes. This year, it's never 6 minutes, but because we have to alternate the dressing room, I usually give them 4 minutes to change out, but this year it's been 6. So are they always changed out and ready to go on the dance floor in 6 minutes? And yes, I have timed them, and I have taken off points for dancers who are not out in 6 minutes. The next one down, who knew I would have had to put this on? But I was teaching a yoga class one Monday, and it was halfway through. And I tell you, these earbuds, I just don't see them. And I sort of flip from right to left to do the yoga when I stand in the front. And it was probably like 20 minutes into class, and I flipped to do the other side, and we're standing up. We were getting ready to do a sun salutation, and girlfriend is jamming out with her earbuds. And I was like, please tell me that you don't have your earbuds and listening to music. She did. So, yeah, that went on there. And then I just added the cell phone for good measure. But yeah, I think some of them, sorry, I'm getting off topic. I think some of them just keep them in their ear and they forget. And I understand that. But I was like, we're in yoga. So added that on the daily dance assessment. I have the dress code on there. And again, that would be whatever you decide on that. And then hair is secured and off the face, which is my hair policy. So that's my formative assessment for, that daily piece that they need to understand and learn how to be a team player in the dance department, basically. And then we get to summative assessment. So what is a summative assessment in the dance classroom? This is your final or major learning check at the end of a unit or the culmination of a project. I would assume that this is generally, most of us, is for our end of semester or our big performance, whenever you do it. If you do it end of year or if you do it semester-wise. And it's usually for a high stakes, so it usually counts for a major grade. I know I do. I have a end of semester show each year, and so those are my summative assessments and my grades that go in the grade book for those. I will say though, for my end of semester summative assessment, while I guess I do too. I guess I use my performance as one. However, there is no way that I could take a rubric up to the booth when I'm calling the show and running the sound and running the lights and check off a rubric for 100 dancers. It's just not going to happen. I can barely run lights and music as it is with all my focus on the stage. So for that kind of thing, for that summative assessment, I have another rubric that's sort of like the daily dance assessment, where do they have their costumes? Is their hair what I asked their hair to be? Are they on time? Are they getting to the theater on time? Are they on stage on time? That kind of thing. And then are they a team player? So I also do a warm up before each show, which has its own rubric, and that's a summative assessment as well. And then what I will do is, I'll show you my sample summative technique rubric. I have that. So I also do that as well to get that technique piece in, because it would be impossible for me. If you have figured out how to do a technique assessment rubric during a performance, I would love to hear your secrets, because I can't do it. So we'll do another one where I'll replace their daily dance assessment with a summative assessment, which is a rubric of technique. So I have that next. Let's see here. I made another screencast, so I will play that. Okay, this is my sample summative rubric for technique. So this would go in place of my daily dance assessment weekly grade, and I would put a summative grade in the grade book for them. This one covers rolling through the spine, demi-plie, tendu, and then contraction. If this was at the end of a semester, I wouldn't put every single thing we've done on this one rubric. I would break it up into classes. So I would put 4 or 5 things on a rubric. So this would be their summative grade. I will put this in the discussion post as well. And each of these indicators would be under the performing standard. So, all right. A handy dandy screencast. So, right, like I said, I wouldn't put everything we've covered in the semester in technique in one rubric. So I'll break it up and do a couple different summative grades for the class and do this kind of thing. Sometimes I've had them come out in small groups and where I'm able to really, really look at them. Sometimes it's just a class, but they know that I'm assessing them on these things. So I've done it different ways. I'm sure you have many ways that you've done that. All right, so a little bit more about assessment. Again, my experience with assessment in the dance classroom is that we're doing it constantly. We're doing it in our technique classes, we're doing it in our rehearsals, we're doing it in every single thing we do in our dance classroom. So I think the biggest challenge for me when I started having to deal with assessments was defining. I'm doing this right now, and that's called a diagnostic assessment. I'm doing this right now, and this is formative, and then I'm doing this is summative. So I think that was my major challenge. because a lot of our assessments look the same, right? So I guess it's just where we're doing them. Are we doing it at the beginning of the year? So then we're doing the diagnostic assessment. As we're moving through the semester, we're doing formative assessments, are in process, in checks to see if they're getting the material and they're learning, or can we move forward, or do we have to remediate? And then the summative, that's our big show, or that's our big unit end, or our big, project. So I think that was the hardest thing for me, is learning how to define what assessment I was doing in the dance classroom for my administration. So when they came in for observations, they would not really truly understand what we do. So, and I made rubrics. So, I think that's the best language to use for your administration, to understand what you're doing. And writing rubrics, it gets easier as you do it. So I feel like sometimes I'm a rubric machine. I can just whip them out, so that language becomes easier the more you use it. So make rubrics. Okay, digital assessments. Okay, so we're coming to an end with COVID, so I did just want to address this quickly. It's been a challenge this year, so I'm not going to dwell on negative energy here about it. But how can you assess this year when your digital students aim their cameras at the ceiling or just their forehead? Yes, I have foreheads on camera in dance. So it's really hard to assess what the heck is going on. In the beginning of the year, I had them submit Flipgrids or videos on the Google Drive, but that got old very quick. And now, I've done the best I can with the dancers. I've talked about this before. We haven't covered as much material as we usually do, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. We got where we're putting on a spring show. I am having the online dancers who have decided they want to take part in the in-person show. They are coming in. We are doing class rehearsals after school. So I'm bringing, let's say I bring in second period on Monday. And then on, Tuesday I bring third period in, and so on and so forth. I have a rotating schedule. So each class will get 4 rehearsals together before the performance. So that's sort of working out. But speaking of assessment, it is a little shocking when an online kid shows up and they don't really have a spot in the dance. Some of them do, some of them don't. It just depended on how we created the choreography. They're like, oh, now I can actually see, and I really wanted to see more than your forehead in the camera so I could assess and help you move forward. So that's been challenging, but we'll make it happen. We've done the best we can this year. Oh, and then I just wanted to talk about some other diagnostic ideas and talk more about some intermediate and advanced, because I based this whole sort of webinar on that intro or that Dance 1 student. You could come in one day and do a quick warm-up and then throw out a quick, fast combination and see who picks it up, see who doesn't. That could be just a check to see how they're picking up choreo. Depending on what you're doing, the written vocabulary or the history or anatomy test, obviously that's an assessment if you're going over that material along with your technique. That's a diagnostic assessment, and that could be a multiple choice, or like I said, if that's a quiz on Google Classroom, or a Quizlet even, or a Kahoot game or something like that. They love Kahoot. So they've used that before for the vocabulary, history, and anatomy. You could have them create a dance combo. And like I said, for the intro, they would pick out a couple vocab words from a bucket, maybe just step that up a bit and give those intermediate or advanced kids on one sheet, maybe 5 words. And so they have to pick out like 3 sheets, and they have to put a combination together with transition steps. So that could be another diagnostic assessment idea. And then an improvisation, and then a more advanced improvisation. So rather than just like, have them go low to the floor, or, go middle level or go high, you could really do some advanced work with improvisation to see where they are with creativity and skill with advanced improvisation. So those are a couple other diagnostic assessment ideas. I did also want to remind you that we have this wonderful community. Here I am talking about dance. So tell your friends, please join the community. You have to subscribe to get to the discussions. I'm really, really excited to get some conversation going with everybody. So I think especially after this year, I think it'd be good to have conversations just about moving forward and maybe what kind of things we want to keep that we've learned from the teaching dance during a pandemic, or, you know, the things that we never want to do again, like concurrent teaching. So anyway, don't forget, and there you go. That is it for the defining assessment in the dance classroom. I will see you again for the second April webinar. Thank you.